Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar on the expenditure reporting form for the opioid settlement agreements. My name is Chelsea Kelleher, and I work for Aurora Health Group, and we are helping the Department of Healthcare Services facilitate today's webinar. Next slide, please. If you have a technical question during today's webinar, please send a direct message to Audrey Richardson from the Aurora Health team, and she can help you troubleshoot the issue. Questions and feedback for today's webinar can be submitted at any time via the question box on your control panel. And today's meeting materials will be available following the webinar on the DHCS OSF webpage. Next slide, please. During today's webinar, Sandy Snellgrove from the DHCS Community Services Division will provide background on California's opioid settlements and give an overview of the expenditure reporting process. Elizabeth Lee from Aurora Health Group will demonstrate how to use the expenditure reporting form, which was built through collaboration with UCLA's integrated substance abuse programs. Kendall Darfler and Diane Hildebrand from UCLA will also be on hand to answer questions about using the platform. Finally, there will be an opportunity at the end of the presentation for Q&A from participants. Next slide, please. How to ask questions for today's webinar. Please type your comments or questions into the Q&A box on your Zoom control panel. We will provide an opportunity for Q&A at the end, and DHCS will be focusing on questions that are applicable to all participating subdivisions. Today's questions will be aggregated after the presentation in order to provide updated guidance and technical assistance documents for participating subdivisions. Next slide, please. DHCS has provided several informational webinars over the past few months, which we encourage you to review. These provide information about allocating opioid settlement funds, how to work with local opioid coalitions, and allowable uses of funds. They are all available on the DHCS OSF webpage. Next slide. On July 17th, DHCS released a draft guidance letter known as a Behavioral Health Information Notice, or BIN, to provide guidance to participating subdivisions on allowable uses for the California Abatement Accounts Fund and California an administrative cost policy closed on July 31st, and DHCS will be incorporating feedback received from PRDIN based on the feedback received from participating subdivisions. Next slide, please. In addition, we encourage you to visit the DHCS website for more information and resources, including FAQs and a technical assistance request form. Next slide. All right, I will now turn it over to Sandy Snellgrove from the Department of Healthcare Services. Sandy is branch chief of the Community Services Division at DHCS, which is tasked with overseeing use and reporting of settlement funds among the participating subdivisions. So I'll hand it over to you, Sandy.
Thank you, Chelsea, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll try to get through this as quickly as possible so that we can begin to do a walkthrough of the online reporting form. So we'll go ahead and get started with a quick overview of the background of the opioid settlements. Next slide, please. Settlements with McKesson, Cardinal Health, and AmerisourceBergen. As you all know, there's a collectively called the distributors, and Janssen Pharmaceuticals were all finalized in April and May of 2022. Settlements with opioid manufacturers Teva and Allergan and the pharmacies Walgreens, Walmart, and CVS, collectively known as the pharmacies, are still pending. California and its participating subdivisions are expected to receive over $3.4 billion from these agreements, and payments will go through 2038. A list of all the participating subdivisions can be found in Appendix 1 of the state subdivision agreements. Next slide, please. Today's presentation will cover the reporting form for the settlements, Janssen, distributors, pharmacies, Teva, and Allergan. Since these settlements follow the same structure within their respective state subdivision agreements, we've designed the online reporting portal with that in mind, knowing that Teva, Allergan, and the pharmacies are structured the same and will follow here shortly for the next reporting period next fiscal year. Just a gentle reminder that all payments will be made directly to participating subdivisions by the National Settlement Administrator, Brown Greer, and not Department of Healthcare Services. One important note is that today's presentation will not cover Mallinckrodt bankruptcy, which has a different structure and a set of requirements. Information on reporting for Mallinckrodt will be forthcoming from DHCS. Next slide, please. The structure is the same for all agreements, as I mentioned on the previous slide. And there's the California abatement account funds, which is 70% going to all participating subdivisions. Those funds must be used for future opioid remediation in one or more of the areas designated in Exhibit E of the settlement agreements. In addition, no less than 50% of the funds received from the California abatement account fund must be used for one or more of the high impact abatement activities. In addition, there's 15% that'll go to the California subdivision fund, which is going to initial plaintiff subdivisions. Those funds must be used as well for future opioid remediation, but may also be used to reimburse past opioid related expenses. The state will receive 15% of that, and all of those funds, in addition, must be used for state appropriated or state allocated future opioid remediation activities. Next slide, please. Oversight of the opioid settlements has been granted to Department of Healthcare Services. And that is, of course, for all of the settlements, Janssen and distributors, and the pending settlements as well. Those oversight responsibilities include monitoring the participating subdivisions for compliance with the agreements, designating additional high impact abatement activities, conducting related stakeholder engagement, and preparing annual reports. Just another reminder that DHCS does not make payments to participating subdivisions. All payments will come from Brown Greer and from Mallinckrodt. I know we're not talking about Mallinckrodt today as it relates to the reporting form, but just a reminder that DHCS also does not distribute payments from the Mallinckrodt bankruptcy. Those will come from the National Opioid Administrating Trust. NOAT 2 is how they're referenced. Again, guidance on Mallinckrodt is forthcoming from DHCS. Next slide, please. Excuse me, participating subdivisions receiving funds from the opioid settlements are required to complete an annual report to DHCS. Cities, however, that have opted out of direct payment do not need to report. This is, however, per settlement, because I know you can opt in and opt out depending on the settlement. If you have opted out of, if you're a city that has opted out of receiving direct payment for all of the settlements, you do not need to report. If you are a city that's opted out of some but have opted into others, you'll still be required to report on those settlements that you opted in to receive direct payment for. DHCS will prepare an annual written report regarding the state's and participating subdivisions' use of funds until those funds are fully expended and for 1 year thereafter. The report will include information about all spending, will be discussed in an annual meeting hosted by DHCS, and those reports will also be posted on the DHCS website. This online reporting report that each participating subdivision will use each year to report their use and expenditures is where DHCS will gather the information from participating subdivisions to be included in that annual report. Next slide, please. DHCS, in collaboration with UCLA's Integrated Substance Abuse Programs, has created an expenditure reporting form for participating subdivisions to report on the use of funds. This morning, an online, a link was sent to all participating subdivisions that we have contacts for this morning. In the event that you didn't get that link, please contact osf@dhcs.ca.gov. That is the link that will allow you to access the online reporting portal. This form will open today on August 1st. Reports are due on September 30th. However, given that this is the first year of reporting and guidance on this portal is not being released until today, a grace period of until October 31st will be granted for the first year of reporting. However, please note that any future years expenditure and use reporting will be required by September 30th of every year. Next slide, please. Payments for this reporting cycle. Participating subdivisions will report on payments and expenditures during the 22-23 state fiscal year. So any payments that were received from July 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2023 will be reported in this reporting cycle. It is likely, and we believe that all participating subdivisions should have received their year 1 and year 2 payments from both Janssen and distributors. Year 3 payments for Janssen and distributors will be included in next year's report. Other settlements with Allergan, Teva, and the pharmacies are pending, and no payments have been sent to participating subdivisions. So when you're in the reporting portal, the online form, you'll enter 0 for these options in the report. Participating subdivisions may have also received payments from Mallinckrodt or NOAT 2 in fiscal year 22-23. These will not be covered in this online reporting form. This will be covered in a separate process. Next slides, please. We're going to begin to look at the expenditure reporting form. Let's go to the next slide, please. Participating subdivisions shall submit only one expenditure report annually for the funds received from the settlements. It is the participating subdivisions, the primary contact within the participating subdivision to collect all required information regarding the opioid settlement funds they have received and to compile into a singular report. This includes information from contractors or sub-grantees, meaning those that you, organizations or other departments that may have been allocated funds from your payments. This needs to be collected because there will only be an opportunity for one report to be submitted. Please do not send the link or the reporting form to any of your contractors or sub-grantees who may have been awarded opioid settlement funds. And please note that the online form can only be completed by one person. A PDF version of the form will be provided so your participating subdivision can collect all data before entering it into the online form. Please note that all reporting must be completed online. The reporting form does not need to be completed all at once. The survey can be returned to as long as the same browser is used and all cookies and history have not been deleted from the browser. We do encourage participating subdivisions to have the data saved elsewhere prior to entering in case there are any technical glitches with saving. Next slide, please. There are 5 main components of the settlement expenditure reporting form. Participating subdivisions will report on the payments received and expenditures from both the California Abatement Account Fund as well as the California Subdivision Fund. There will be reporting on administrative expenses, allowable expenses reporting, as well as planned activities reporting. Next slide, please. In addition to this presentation, there are additional support documents available to participating subdivisions. The necessary materials checklist will help subdivisions gather the necessary information before reporting and inputting any data into the online form. Basically, this form was designed to just give you a checklist of all of the data and materials that you'll need prior to going into the online form to do your reporting. The reporting form will contain both expenditure data and programmatic data reporting. We recommend that all data is collected before you start reporting in the online form. We also recommend that you review the PDF version of the online reporting tool. I'm not sure from our team, I know it's been posted to the DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund webpage. I don't know if it went out in an email, but if you look on our DHCS OSF webpage, this expenditure form PDF preview should be on there. And that PDF is going to give you a full preview of what's expected and what's online in that reporting form. Also, we've developed a question and answers document. This has questions DHCS has received regarding the form and answers that DHCS has provided. Next slide, please. We're going to begin covering the online expenditure form. Next slide, please. Section 1. Section 1 collects basic information about your participating subdivision and the individual that's completing the form. It's basic general demographic information. The first major part, next slide. The first major part of the online form are sections 2 through 4, which will cover information reported on the California abatement account specifically. Next slide, please. Section 2, this section will serve of the survey will capture all settlement agreements that your participating subdivision has received or will receive funds from. This form, this should be all of them for counties, but cities may vary depending on opt-in status for each of the settlements. This section will also determine which settlement agreements you will be asked to report on throughout the rest of the form. We also want to make sure that if you're unsure which settlement agreements that your participating subdivision may have opted into for direct payment, this is really specific to cities, that you should check with your city or outside council that's been handling your opioid remediation, opioid-related matters. Next slide, please. Section 3 will cover reporting total payments received from each of the independent settlements that you received within the state fiscal year of 22-23. This should include a combined total of both year 1 and year 2 payments from Janssen and distributors. If you are unsure about the amounts your participating subdivision received from each settlement, once again, please connect with your city, county, or outside counsel that's handling your opioid settlement matters, or you can reach out to the settlement administrator, Brown Greer. Next slide, please. Section 3 will also collect interest earned on the payments received from each settlement. Please list all interest earned by each settlement from the California abatement account during the state fiscal year 22-23. Please note that participating subdivisions are not required to place funds into interest-bearing accounts. However, if your participating subdivision chose to do so, you must report on interest earned from those accounts. Next slide, please. Section 3 will also cover reporting on any reallocation of funds to or from a participating subdivision. This would include reallocations that your participating subdivision has either sent to or received from another participating subdivision and must be reported. For example, if one participating subdivision reallocates their funds to the county or to another participating subdivision for any reason whatsoever, that will need to be reported by both the participating subdivision that has given those funds or transferred those funds to another participating subdivision, and will also need to be reported from the participating subdivision that's in receipt of those funds. And then just a reminder that all those reallocations completed during the state fiscal year in 22-23 will need to be reported, and that is by settlement. Next slide, please. Lastly, for the California abatement account, please list the total dollar amount expended in the state fiscal year of 22-23 per settlement. So in essence, this is where you'll be reporting on how much you have expended from each one of the independent settlements. This is the grand total that you'll be reporting in this section. Next slide, please. This next section is for California Subdivision Fund. This applies to participating subdivisions that are also plaintiff subdivisions who have received payments from the California Subdivision Fund. If your participating subdivision is also a plaintiff subdivision, you will need to complete the following sections 6 through 9. If you're participating subdivision, if you are a participating subdivision that is not a plaintiff subdivision, you will automatically skip to section 10. Once again, if you are unsure if you are a plaintiff subdivision and or received payments from the California Subdivision Fund, please connect with your city council or outside counsel handling your opioid-related matters. Next slide, please. Section 5 requests participating subdivisions or participating subdivisions to identify if they are a plaintiff subdivision or not. Basically, this is a yes or no question, and that question will determine other areas of the form that you will see. So if you select no in this question, you will not advance to the remaining sections that are collecting information from plaintiff subdivision. And again, if you answer yes here, it will advance you to the next sections since you've identified yourself as being a plaintiff subdivision. So you will complete the following sections. Next slide, please. Again, if you're a plaintiff subdivision, you'll move into section 6 and 7 of the report form, which in essence mirrors sections 3 and 4 for the abatement accounts, which we've already gone over when we covered the abatement account funds reporting. Plaintiff subdivisions will enter the amount of payments they've received and expended from the California Subdivision Fund for each of those settlements. Next slide, please. Section 8 is requesting a response on whether the plaintiff subdivision used any of these funds for past opioid-related expenses And if it was reported to Brown Greer. Just note that any opioid settlement funds spent from the California subdivision fund on past opioid related expenses or anything that does not qualify as opioid remediation must be reported to Brown Greer as well as in this reporting form. Next slide, please. Plaintiff subdivisions in Section 9 using monies from the subdivision fund for purposes that do not qualify as opioid remediation must report that information to the settlement administrator, Brown Greer, and also list the total amount expended in this section of the online report on any non-opioid remediation activities. Next slide, please. This next section will cover reporting on administrative expenses. Next slide, please. All participating subdivisions must report on administrative expenses. Related administrative expenses must be reported by each settlement your participating subdivision received. Administrative expenses, which we're defining as indirect costs, must be reasonable and may not exceed 10% of the total allocation for payments received from the California Abatement Accounts Fund. Next slide, please. This upcoming section of the reporting is on allowable expense reporting. It will cover reporting on what activities and your programs and programs your participating subdivision has expended funds on. Next slide, please. Section 11 again covers allowable expense reporting. Participating subdivisions will describe their funded opioid remediation activities and how they align with the allowable uses listed in Exhibit E and California's high impact abatement activities. Examples of activities or programs may be, for example, the purchase of naloxone or expanding a treatment center. So meaning you allocated some of the funds to a local treatment center. That would be included in this expense reporting. You will be reporting on one activity or program at a time. So even if you have 3 activities, you'll go through each activity by itself independently before you move into the next activity. The form will then ask the same 7 questions for each of those activities or programs to determine if the activities or programs that the funds were expended on were allowable. Next slide, please. Section 11, this is continued reporting on allowable expenses. For each activity or name or program, you'll need to provide a name and a short description of the activity or program. Funds expended by each settlement and each fund account are also necessary. On the screenshot here, you will see that the form requests information on funds expended by the California Abatement Account Settlement. And I don't know if anybody on the team can correct me or not, but I think this would be exactly the same for the subdivision fund, if I'm correct.
Yes, Sandy, that's correct.
Okay. Next slide, please. Again, I guess maybe I didn't need to ask that question. I just needed to advance to the next slide, but this screenshot shows request of information on funds expended by the California Subdivision Fund and by each of the settlements. If your subdivision is not a plaintiff subdivision, you will not see question number 4. In addition, you'll need to provide a start date for the activity or program that you're reporting on. If your participating subdivision gave funds to local agencies or organizations to execute or implement the activity or program, please list them as well here in this section. Next slide, please. Section 11 will ask which strategies from Exhibit E the activity or program meets. A list of allowable opioid remediation uses from Exhibit E can be found on the DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund website. Also, you can see the list of opioid remediation uses, otherwise known as Exhibit E. All of those resources as well are listed on our website. And in addition, you can list multiple strategies. So when you're in section 11 and you've listed your program or activity, this section is in essence asking you which of the allowable activities in Exhibit E that your program meets, and you can select multiple. Next slide, please. An example of that is if you treat opioid use disorder, if that's what you selected, was to treat opioid use disorder, it's that large, the larger category was selected in the previous question. The subcategories that fall underneath that larger category will appear in the form, and you will be asked to identify the specific strategies that you are funding with your opioid settlement funds. Again, multiple items can be selected in this question as well. Next slide, please. Just a reminder that no less than 50% of the funds received by participating subdivisions from the California Abatement Accounts Fund must be used for one or more of the high impact abatement activities. In this section, you'll describe how the activity or program meets the selected high impact abatement activity. You can again select one or multiple of the high impact abatement activities listed in this question. Please note that there are 6 high impact abatement activities, but only 3 of them are listed here. When you're in the online report, you'll see all 6 of them. Also note that a lot of the high impact abatement activities are population based. And so certain selection of one or more of the 6 high impact abatement activities will trigger a follow-up question asking about the specific population served by the program or activity. And again, just a reminder that no less than 50% of the funds received by participating subdivisions from the California Abatement Accounts Fund must be used in one or more of the high impact abatement activities. Next slide, please. Lastly, any participating subdivisions can submit any other information that they deem relevant to report in this last question. The same flow of questions will be asked for each activity or program that your participating subdivision reports. As we walk through the online reporting form, you'll see that once you have finished reporting on that one singular activity, but you said you had 3 activities, as soon as you're done, it'll rotate you back through those same questions for your next activity that you're going to report on. Next slide, please. Again, this section will repeat section 11 and allows the users to submit additional activities or programs that may have been missed in section 11. This section really, that's if you're done reporting all of your activities. This section was intended as an additional opportunity to submit reporting data without restarting the online form. If there are no additional activities or programs that you intend to report, select no, and then it'll go ahead and move you to section 13. Next slide, please. This next section will capture the planned activities or programs that your participating subdivision have for the next fiscal year. When you get to this section, you'll indicate if your participating subdivision will have the same activities or programs in the next fiscal year. It will indicate if there will be changes to any of the activities or programs that you already have. And it will indicate if there will be new activities or programs. There's also the option to select unsure. So that can also be done as well if you're just not sure what activities you'll be funding in the next following year. If a participating subdivision will maintain all the same activities as previously reported and do not anticipate any changes to existing activities or programs or new ones in the next fiscal year, they will skip to section 15. Next slide, please. This section, sorry about that, I've got some alarms going off. This section is similar to section 11. For the section 11 in the allowable expenses reporting, participating subdivisions will not be asked for planned budgets or expenditures for each activity and program. However, participating subdivision should report the activity or program name, provide a short description, whether it's an allowable expense, and identify if it's a high impact abatement activity. Next slide, please. Section 15 is our efforts to just remind you that DHCS has technical assistance opportunities available. In this section, you'll be asked if you're interested in technical assistance and if it's needed on how to spend opioid settlement funds. We have a TA request process, which can be found on the DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund webpage. Participating subdivisions, we do ask that you please review the California Opioid Settlements Allowable Expenditures resource, the guides for allocating opioid settlement funds, and a few other of our resource documents, including our frequently asked questions, prior to submitting a request for technical assistance. Most of the information on the allowable uses, we've also developed a guiding principles document on really these core guiding principles on the use of opioid settlement funds. And we also have a pretty robust frequently asked questions resource tool as well. And we prefer that you read all that prior to submitting your technical assistance request. Most things might be answered through the review of those documents. If you're interested in receiving technical assistance from DHCS, your staff should complete the opioid settlement technical assistance form, also located on the website, and send the completed form to our inbox at osf@dhcs.ca.gov. Next slide, please. When you've reached the end of the report, after you've reported on all of your expenditures, you'll reach the part where you have to do the attestations. It's up to the participating subdivision to decide who provides the certification and attestation for the acknowledgement of 50% of the California High Impact Abatement Activity funds. So meaning at the end of the report and you're reporting on your abatement account funds, you need to attest that at least 50% of the funds that you received within the calendar year, fiscal year, has been expended on high impact abatement activities. Participating subdivisions must also certify that their use of funds received through the settlements has been used in compliance with the settlement agreements. And also you're attesting that all the information that you've provided is true and correct. The person completing the form whose information was submitted in section 1 should be the person who certifies and attests that the information on the reporting form is true and correct to their knowledge. And of course, that all funds should be that all funds have been used in compliance with the settlement agreements. All right, next slide, please. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Elizabeth for the review of the expenditure report.
Thank you, Sandy. All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Elizabeth Lee. I am with Arrare Health Group and aiding Sandy and the DHCS team in previewing the live expenditure reporting form for this training. I will be walking through this expenditure reporting form, certain parts a little bit more quickly and certain parts a little bit more slowly. The PDF preview is available as well as the link so that your team can go through and read it more carefully if you desire. So to start, we have our cover page. This just provides information about the reporting form itself and the due dates. Please note that only one person should complete this form once per year by each subdivision. This form should not be sent to any contractors or any subgrantees as it is the responsibility of the subdivision to collect the information and submit it. Once we advance from the cover page, we will move into section 1. This is general information about the participating subdivision and the main person who is filling out this form. Throughout the rest of the survey, you'll see that you can actually not advance unless you fill out the questions that are asked in each section. That is why we recommend using the PDF preview to make sure you can gather all the information prior to using the online form. Since this is a preview, we'll just go ahead and toggle that off, but your participating subdivisions will not have that ability. So going through the subdivisions, you'll select which subdivision you are, put in your address, and then the name and email of the preparer and the phone number as well. The email that is submitted here will be the email that is kind of the main contact regarding this form, as well as the email that will receive a copy of the completed form once you submit it. So please be sure to select an email address or a contact person that makes most sense for that. Next is the settlements funds information. So in this section, you will select all settlements that your participating subdivision received. It's very critical that you fill out this section correctly, as it will affect the rest of the survey as well. So as an example, we'll just select 4 of the 7 here and advance. Next, the next 2 sections will report on the California abatement account. In the allocation section, you'll need to list the settlement dollars your subdivision received, interest earned on those settlement dollars, and any reallocations of settlement dollars to and from other participating subdivisions. As you notice here, only the 4 settlements that we selected appear in any of these questions. If you selected all 7 will appear. If you select a smaller amount, those are the ones that will appear in this section. So we'll do the settlement dollars and then the interest earned. And then your subdivision will be asked if you reallocated any of the funds to another participating subdivision. If you say yes, a table will appear where you can put in the information of who was a subdivision that received those funds, what amount was reallocated, and from which settlement that was from. If you select no, such as, did your participating subdivision receive any reallocations? If you select no, that table does not pop up. In this section, you will need to list the subdivision's total expenditures from each settlement. Later in the form, you'll be asked about the program and activities that were funded. Next, you'll be asked if you are a plaintiff subdivision. This section, as Sandy had mentioned in the previous presentation, if you say yes, you'll receive a couple of other sections that you will need to fill out. If you say no, those will not appear. So we'll say yes for this test run. And then again, in section 6 and 7, it mirrors kind of what we've already seen through the California abatement account. So again, you'll list your settlement dollars received as payments from this specific fund, your interest earned, and then any reallocations. Again, if you select yes, a table will pop up. And if you select no, nothing will appear. And then if you say yes, something will appear. So you can kind of advance based off of what makes sense for your participating subdivision. Again, we'll do the expenditures. So this is the section where you would put the funds expended from the California subdivision fund. Next, we ask about past opioid-related expenses. Plaintiff subdivisions will say yes or no if they've spent their funds or not. If funds were spent, they must be reported to Brown Greer. And in this question, we just ask if you have already reported those expenditures to Brown Greer. So you can say yes or no. Next, we'll be asking about non-opioid remediation expenses. This section asks for the total amount of funds spent on non-opioid remediation across all settlements. So across all settlements, you'll put a total dollar amount in this section. Section 10 is administrative expenses. If you had identified that you were not a plaintiff subdivision, instead after section 5, you would skip to here, section 10. This must be answered by all participating subdivisions. And this section details the administrative expenses that are spent from each settlement by the California abatement account here, and then by the California subdivision account here. Please note that we have also added a link to the DHCS administrative cost policy for additional guidance. And then lastly, you need to acknowledge that participating subdivisions may not exceed a 10% cap for total allocations from the California abatement account for administrative costs. Next, we'll move into the allowable expense reporting. There's a lot of information here provided on just some guidance around what are activities and programs, some examples and definitions around that, as well as a link to the allowable expense document that you can review prior to completing this section. This is where you will put in the total number of activities that your participating subdivision spent on using the settlement funds. So for this example, we'll say 2, so you can get a sense of what the kind of rotating flow looks like. We will add an activity name for the program, a short description here, 2 to 4 sentences. And then you will dictate how much funds were spent from the California abatement account, as well as a California subdivision account. An activity start date, just kind of a rough approximation of when this activity started or is planned to be started. And then if there were any local agencies or organizations that were given funds to, this is where you would put that information. Next, you would select the allowable expenditure type for this activity. Again, this is referencing the allowable expenses document, which you can see here. You can select multiple answers for this section. So just for an example, we'll select 2 of our kind of overarching categories. And for each of these that we select, we will also get another question that are subcategories. So we've selected treat opioid use disorder as one of the activities that this allowable expenditures that this activity falls under. And then we will see treat opioid use disorder down here and select one or multiple sub-strategies, whichever one is related to your activity or program. And then again, we had selected support people in treatment and recovery above, and we also get a list of sub-strategies here as well. These are all directly pulled from the Exhibit E allowable expenses document, so you can review that ahead of time as well. Next, you'll be asked about the high impact abatement activity. Please note that you will be required, or that no less than 50% of the funds received by participating subdivisions from the California abatement account in each year must be spent on high impact abatement activities. You will select which, if any, high impact abatement activities your activity meets. You can select, again, multiple in this section as well. For a few of these questions, there will be a follow-up question. So here you've noted that we've selected 3, addressing the needs of communities of color and vulnerable populations. As we selected that, you can also write a short description of how your activity meets that high impact abatement activity. And then for this one in particular, there's a follow-up question around please describe the populations that this program serves. So you'd be required to answer all of these questions before you can advance to the next page. And once you advance, you can share just anything else you would like to share about that first activity, anything that you find relevant or pertinent. And then you'd move on. And again, you can see now we have activity number 2. So we would kind of repeat that same flow for every activity that we are listing in the reporting form. So whatever number you put into that question of what is your total number of activities, that's how many times this form would kind of repeat the cycle to get information on each activity or program that you are reporting on. So we'll go ahead and just skip through this for our preview. And then section 12 is an additional activity section. This section provides another opportunity to add activities or programs if you've missed any during that first section. It's just so that mostly that if you had something that you remembered or added last minute, you don't have to restart the whole form, you can add them here. If you say no, you'll skip ahead to section 13, which are the planned activities reporting for the next fiscal year. In this section, participating subdivisions will be asked if you are planning to maintain the same activities or add or change any activities in the next fiscal year. If there are any changes to activities or if you are adding new activities, the participating subdivision will be asked to define the activities and programs that they are trying to fund in the next year. So we'll say that we are planning to maintain the same activities and that we are also planning to add or change some of the activities as well. In that case, we'll be asked this question around how many total activities do you plan to anticipate reporting on in the next fiscal year? And we'll add a number, we'll say 2, again, as an example. And then you'll notice that this is very similar to section 11, just pared down in information. So for each of the planned activities, you'll add a program name, a description, and then which of the allowable expenses that it may fall under. And again, these subcategories will appear and you will select the subcategories as well. You'll also be asked for high impact abatement activities for the planned expenditures, and you can select one or multiple of those before advancing. And then again, you'll be offered an opportunity to share anything else about your planned activity before moving on. And as you notice, we had selected 2 in our planned activities. So we are seeing this section again, planned activity number 2 here. So each of the numbers that you will select, if you said 3 or 4, they'll be labeled with the numbers there that you can kind of keep separate which activities or programs that you're reporting on. Next, you'll be asked if you would like some technical assistance. If you say yes, this information pop-up will appear that leads to the technical assistance request form, as well as a link to the website that has other documents. If you say no, nothing will appear and you can just advance on to the next section. Lastly, once you finish your reporting, you will need to sign the form certifying acknowledgement that the high impact abatement activity policy is followed, as well as that the form is complete and true with correct information. You'll also need to certify and attest that the funds were used in compliance with the national settlement agreements and the state subdivision agreements as well. After you submit the survey here on the submit button, you'll be able to download the file. You'll be able to download a PDF of the report and the records on the next page. An email of the results will also automatically be sent to the email that was added at section 1 in the very beginning of the survey. So if we click submit, it should give us an option here to download the PDF that you can download for your own records. I think I will turn it back over to Chelsea or Sandy for the next part.
Great, thank you, Elizabeth. So if we can pull up the slide deck again, we'll go into our Q&A session now. We've been taking the questions that have been coming into the Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. And so we'll read out a couple of the questions that have come in so far. So the first question I want to read is someone asks, does the form refer to the required annual report? Specifically, is it only the online form that is due, or is there a narrative report due as well? So I wonder, Sandy, if you want to speak to this, will this report that we're discussing today be the only one that the participating subdivisions are required to complete for the past fiscal year?
Yes, that's actually correct. This report is the only report that'll be required from participating subdivisions and will be used by DHCS to draft an annual narrative report.
Great. Another couple of questions that are somewhat related. One person asks, the form includes both fiscal and programmatic questions. Is it possible to have 2 people designated to complete the form? Another person asks, since only one person can submit the report, is there a PDF fillable or Excel version that a subdivision can pre-fill and show it to an executive before entering it into the actual portal? So Sandy, I wonder if you want to speak to the kind of the PDF that's available for the subdivisions.
Yeah, we posted this morning on the Opioid Settlement Fund webpage which includes a PDF fillable form that can be used and completed prior to logging in and doing the online reporting. So you will be able to have multiple people either review it or contribute to it prior to the individual going in and using the online form.
Another couple of questions that came in, there seemed to be some confusion about participating subdivisions who opted out of receiving funds and therefore had their funds go to the county versus the section of the form that asks about reallocation, which is really more about a subdivision receiving the funds and then choosing to transfer them to another participating subdivision. So I wonder if you want to clarify that. The question specifically is, if a city's settlement funds were reallocated to the county and sent directly from Brown Greer to the county such that the city never received them, the city does not have to complete the form. Is this correct?
Yes, that's correct. If the city received any funds from any of the settlements, for example, we're aware that there have been some cities that may have received their first payment from one of the settlements, but then contacted Brown Greer to opt out of any of the future direct payments. And if that's the case, you would need to report on any of the payments that you've received. And then you would just, in the beginning of the form, you're going to state that you've only received those payments or opted into one of those settlements. If you're a city that has opted out of receiving any of the payments and you've never received those payments from Brown Greer, or you returned those payments to Brown Greer because you opted out, you would not be required to do the online reporting.
Great. And then another counterpoint to that, based on the information shared, it sounds like participating subdivisions that reallocated funding to other agencies after receiving payments from Brown Greer are required to report. And so that is correct. That's what you.
Yes, that's correct.
Another couple of questions that are somewhat related regarding how to report if a participating subdivision has not yet spent any of their funds. So one of the questions is, should a participating local agency still submit a report if there is no activity to report because the funds have not been expended yet? And another question asks, how should I report in the first section if we are launching our use of funds in this next fiscal year, but did not launch in fiscal year 22-23?
Yeah, participating subdivisions are allowed to roll over those funds from year to year. And then Elizabeth, I don't know, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure. We're just reporting how much was received within that fiscal year, the payments that you received. But when you go to the expenditure section, you would report 0 for any expenditures from any of those settlements.
Yes,
Is that's correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So just to be clear on that, you would still be required to do the report. You would go in and report that you have received those payments. But when you get into the expenditure section of the report, you would put 0 that you have not expended any of those funds.
Great, thank you. Another question about the year of the payments. So obviously, as you spoke earlier, Sandy, you mentioned that year 1 and year 2, Jansen and distributors should have been received by the participating subdivisions, and year 3 should be coming out very soon if they haven't been received already. One person indicated, we received a payment that is for year 3. Does that mean that the countdown to spend those funds doesn't start until this upcoming fiscal year?
I think this is complicated and maybe something that we end up addressing in this report next year, where we maybe align the language. Instead of saying fiscal year, we may align the language in the online reporting to say year 1, year 2, year 3 payments. However, we're not there yet. We haven't made that decision. But if you received a year 3 payment from Jansen or distributors prior to July 1st. I think for this reporting period, if you received it prior to the end of the fiscal year, you could report on that. I'm not sure how we're planning to handle that, but I think what we could do is table that question and then let's send a response out for that. Because I think the question really would be is when did you receive the payment? Was it before the end of the fiscal year or was it after July 1st?
Great, thank you. Yes, we'll table that one and come back to it. The next, a couple of questions came in about the planned activities section and around, it sounds like maybe for these participating subdivisions, it's a little bit in flux what the activities are going to be in the coming year. So a couple of people asked if the planned activities change, what is the process for revising and how stringent is the reporting on that section of the form? If they don't plan to add or change activities in the next year, but they change course with that through the course of the year, is there a requirement that they come back and edit the form? And I believe in this, it's more of a just gathering information about the upcoming year, right, Sandy? It's not necessarily, going to be held to whatever was listed in those planned activities.
Yeah, that's correct. It's not a stringent process. You wouldn't have to come back in to the online report and correct that information. I think in essence, what we're trying to garner here is, are you considering planning new or additional activities or just continuing with the same activities? And really, in essence, what that does is then transitions into the request for technical assistance from DHCS. So no, it's not a stringent process. In essence, we're just trying to garner thoughts for the next expenditure year.
Another person asks about the pharmaceutical settlement allocations by subdivision. I think they're speaking to the agreements that are currently pending and not yet finalized, where payments haven't yet been received. And I think they're asking about the timelines of that. They'd like to plan and decide whether they want to take those sources of funding or if they have other resources available. So Sandy, I don't know if this is something that DHCS would be the best to contact or if perhaps the AG's office might be a more helpful contact on that.
Yeah, I'm not really sure I understood, what the question was. Chelsea, can you read it back, please?
The person asks, when will pharmaceutical settlement allocations by subdivision be available? The city would like to if it the county to receipt of those funds.
Yeah, apologies. I'm not sure if it's me cutting out or if it was you, Chelsea, but I think the question was about the pending settlements with Teva, Allergan, the pharmacies, and any other of the pending bankruptcies. But any questions about those settlements, opt-in status, and anything of the sorts for any of the settlements that aren't final would need to go to the Attorney General, the California Attorney General's office. A link to their email inbox is located on the DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund webpage, where you can reach out to them directly. If you're looking at other payment information, including when can you expect your next payment from Janssen distributors, or once the settlements are final with Teva, Allergan, and the pharmacies, payment amounts, payment dates, that kind of information can be directed to the settlement administrator, Brown Greer. We also have a link to their email inbox located on the DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund webpage. Also, just to add is that the California Attorney General's opioid settlement webpage is also a pretty valuable resource. And so we would encourage participating subdivisions to go to their webpage, and there's a slew of resources that are available.
Great. We have a few more questions. I think a lot of them are around, issues that we've already sort of addressed, but we'll go through a couple of these in any case. So another person asks if they're still in the planning stage, their programs probably won't start until fiscal year 25. Do they still need to complete that form and include this information?
Yes, you would still need to report on all of the payments amounts that you've received. And again, when you get into expenditure activities, if you haven't expended any of those funds, you would just enter a 0.
And relatedly, another person asks, if all received funds were not expended in the fiscal year in which they were received, are they permitted to be carried forward into the next fiscal year? And the answer there.
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Another person asks for the planned expenditures section of the form. Will they need to add actual dollar amounts to those expenditure amounts, or is it just the planned activity and description?
Yeah, we're not looking for any expenditure information for any of the planned activities. So you're just entering if you have any new or you're continuing your existing activities, but no expenditure information is collected there.
Another person asks about any need to submit invoices proving expenses related to administrative costs. And so there is no section of the form that asks to attach invoices, but I wonder if you can speak a little bit to some of the expectations around maintenance of documents and documentation and things like that.
Yeah, at the beginning of the presentation, one of the very first several slides, we mentioned that DHCS has released a draft behavioral health information notice that we've requested feedback on. It includes information about DHCS's oversight over expenditures, and that would include reviewing expenditures, and if there's any reason that we would need additional information about those expenditures, that we would be asking for reasonable access to expenditure records. And so if you just review that draft guidance, we did send an email out with that draft guidance to participating subdivisions as well, and it explains the reasonable administrative cost policy that's been established by DHCS, and it also includes information on audit activity that could be conducted by DHCS. Again, like Chelsea mentioned, there is no area in the online reporting form where you would put invoices or any attach any documents for any reason.
Another person asks, and I think Elizabeth spoke to this at the end of her section, but another person asks if they will get a copy of the data after it's reported. So I believe the form at the end has the option to download a PDF so that that's accessible after the fact. Another person asks, states that their participating subdivision won't be able to complete the reporting form by the September 30th deadline. Is it possible to receive an extension?
Yeah, once again, the ongoing date deadline for reporting is September 30th each year. However, since this is the first year and the reporting portal is just being released as of today, an extension has already been granted to all participating subdivisions till October 31st. We do, however, encourage participating subdivisions, if you have all the information to complete the report, we ask that you do so as quickly as possible. However, again, the extension's automatically been granted to October 31st for all participating subdivisions.
Great, thank you. Another person asks, are funds required to be kept in an interest-bearing account? So I think you addressed this in that section of the form.
Yeah, it's not a requirement to maintain funds in an interest-bearing account.
And another person asks, how do we know which settlements or accounts we have received funds from?
There should be a payment notice that comes from the National Administrator, Brown Greer, for any wires or transfers or any checks for payments. And it should identify each of the settlements. If you're unsure what payments you've received, you can contact Brown Greer. Again, their email address is linked on our DHCS Opioid Settlement Fund webpage. I'm thinking for more longer term, it would be probably in the best interest for participating subdivisions to coordinate with whomever is in receipt of those payments to obtain that payment information prior to doing the expenditure reporting. But this is year one, and I know it's taking time for all of this to get settled and for all of us to figure this out. So I would encourage you to reach out to your city, county, or outside counsel about which payments, or you can contact Brown Greer to obtain payment information. If it's Mallinckrodt, it would show up as NOAT 2. Again, this reporting is reporting portal is not for Mallinckrodt. That guidance is forthcoming from DHCS, but you should be seeing payments that are coming from the national administrator. And then there should also have been payments, may have been payments that came from NOAT 2, and those would have been for the Mallinckrodt bankruptcy matter. For those payments, I apologize, I almost forgot, on our website as well, I think we've linked folks as well to NOAT 2 administrator, to the trustee, so that if you did receive a payment that is not a settlement payment, you can contact the trustee. We have their email address also linked on our webpage for you to contact them in regards to payment information.
Great, thank you. Another person asks if the expenditure reporting form will only be completed annually, and do you anticipate the reporting frequency to change?
At this time, our intent is to collect this information annually. This is a learning process, I think, for all of us. And so right now, I think it's hard to tell if there will be any anticipated changes in the reporting cycle. However, as of right now, it's just going to be on a fiscal year, one time annually.
Great, thank you. I think a lot of the questions in the chat have already been answered or have sort of converged around some of the same themes that we've already addressed. So I'll pose this as the last question, just to kind of give another reminder of this. If someone asks if you could please describe again how multiple people can contribute to the report. So how would DHCS suggest that programmatic and fiscal staff collaborate on what all needs to go into the report, and then work to actually go in and enter that information?
Yes, thank you for that. The DHCS has created a PDF form filling for a document that can be used prior to logging in to do the online reporting. And that can be completed by multiple individuals. Again, it'll just be the one person going in to do the report and do the attestations on the information, but please use the resource checklist. It'll give you an idea of all the information that needs to be collected prior to going online, but also the PDF version of the form should be completed prior to going in online.
Great. And I think with that, we've addressed most of the presentation. We will be going through the Q&A from this presentation to pull out important information, to update DHCS's guidance, to update those FAQ documents on the website. So please, thank you for your questions, and we will be using those to further refine and develop that guidance. Next slide, please. So just wanted to give a couple of next steps here. The online reporting form, as Sandy mentioned, was sent to all participating subdivision contacts this morning. Please reach out to DHCS at osf@dhcs.ca.gov if you did not receive the link. As Sandy mentioned, the reporting form will open today. Reports on an ongoing basis will be due on September 30th. And this year, there will be a grace period through October 31st for the submission of reports for this first year of reporting. Next slide, please. And just a quick reminder about resources before we wrap up today. For more information on the opioid settlement funds and the resources that were discussed, please visit the DHCS OSF webpage. For questions or feedback on today's presentation, please email osf@dhcs.ca.gov. And to request technical assistance in a more extensive format to get more questions answered about your specific technical assistance needs, please fill out the TA request form located on the DHCS OSF webpage. With that, we'll close out the webinar. Thank you everyone for attending, and we'll be posting this to the DHCS OSF webpage likely by tomorrow. So you'll have the recording and the slide deck available then. Thanks everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your afternoon.